Hey, and welcome everybody to an Agile Manifesto Futurespective. I'm going to just literally give you a 30-second quick intro, and then I'm going to pass you into our first session of the day, which is going to be the Futurespective expert panel discussion with Brian, Ray, Jurgon, Jeff, and Giles. These slides are moving forwards, but big happy birthday from everybody. Just for the audience, because we've got some amazing audience out there. We've got events running all of February, so this just shows you per region where those events are. A huge global interest in the Agile20Reflect Festival, and everybody who's here today, that's you guys on the map. So literally this afternoon, I've taken what it was on LinkedIn and I've pushed that out into a whole stack of different countries and a different person. So if you see yourself on this list, you know, feel free to add on the chat and say, hi, I'm on, or I'm listening. We've got a whole stack. We've got 4 pages of attendees here. And obviously some of those names you're probably quite familiar with. And of course, you can see the panel who have all got their webcams on at the moment. So after the next slide, we're going to see some demographics to give you an idea of the type of people who are attending this event today. So there's in number 1 position is Scrum Masters. So hopefully we're pitching to the right type of people. Like I said, this is a snapshot of 120 countries which are attending this session today. So some interesting companies that are doing some great manager level and director and staff level. So with that, I'm going to hand over to the first session of the day, hosted by Giles Lindsay, who's got an amazing expert panel to actually go off and start this festival off with a bang. So if you want to connect to any of them, there's going to be QR codes on each one of the pages. And with that, I'm going to actually now pass on to Giles to intro for the panel discussion.
Fantastic. Look, Jonathan, great intro, and thanks very much, everybody, for obviously coming along to this anniversary event. I mean, we've got to be saying right now, firstly, happy birthday to Agile. And we know it happened, obviously, this weekend, 20 years ago. So this is a fantastic event for everybody to be here enjoying. And it is with great pleasure that we have got an awesome audience here joining us. And we've got a great panel. I think, Jonathan, if you can let Jeff back in, I think he is still just has some access problems to join us and get in with. So if you don't mind just trying to see if you can get him to become a panelist, I will wait a couple of seconds and see whether he can join in. But otherwise, you know, I want to really say thank you very much, firstly, to obviously Jurgen, Ray, and Brian for coming along, joining us today, and being part of what's essentially event part 1, the past and future 20 years reflection. Jeff, good to have you back, sir. Great, awesome. Well, look, thank you very much. I'm going to kickstart with some initial questions to get the sort of the minds and juices going this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever our GPS is in the world right now. And as we do, can each of you please just give a very quick sort of 30 seconds intro about who you are, why you're here representing, and obviously share that with the audience, especially as it's still growing and getting larger and larger every second. So my first intro question for our past and future 20 years reflection is, how has Agile evolved in the last 20 years since the signing of that original manifesto? And I don't know, Brian, if you want to kick us off because you were there and sort of help launch that conversation. But I think I'm going to start with you, if that's okay, and tell the world who you are.
Okay, I'm Brian Merrick. I was sort of accidentally invited to the Agile Manifesto meeting, so I can't claim a huge amount of authority. I was invited to be the token tester. I was a person who is known for a style of testing that was very similar to Agile called context-driven testing. And so Martin Fowler twisted somebody's arm and got me invited. I no longer really do testing, but I noticed that Lisa Crispin is on the call. She's the woman whose picture was with a donkey. she and Janet Gregory are now the people that I consider the go-to people for Agile testing. So the question was, what has changed in the last 20 years? Well, an interesting thing about the attendees at the first Agile conference was that they were overwhelmingly programmers. They were a surprising number of them, including me, had experience with the Smalltalk language. Smalltalk is a particular, very flexible language, and out of Smalltalk, there arose the software patterns movement, and Agile arose out of software patterns. Patterns have sort of died in a useful way, though the idea is still good, but that's how we got to Agile. And I think that the big difference that's happened in the last 20 years is that the programmers have kind of been shuffled out of the picture. Agile has become a management style rather than a sort of grassroots bubble up programming style of development. So what's been lost is the actual fingers on keyboards producing code.
Fantastic. Brian, thanks very much for that. I'm going to hand over next in sequence, Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hi. Well, I'm Ray Arell. I've been in the industry, I think, far too long. I'm a hardware person. I'm a systems engineer. Grew up in semiconductor, and semiconductor manufacturing has been my start of all of this. And getting involved with Agile, at least in the early days, after this, the software people came in and I think did a really good job of kind of taking some of the goodness of what we do as engineers and kind of culminated it together into the manifesto and thinking about it in the way of how can we reconnect with management and how can we reconnect with our customers and do value. When I fell into it, I was doing RTL code for state machine design and other things. And so hardware, which is really funny, if you talk to hardware people, they typically will say, well, those are the software people over here and these are the hardware people over here. But reality is we're all writing software. And so taking those design patterns that Brian was talking about and starting to apply those to a hardware equation actually started to work really well. We started to see quality go up. We started to see productivity go up, reusability go up, all of those things. And so I think in the early days, yeah, that technical revolution that he was talking about was very much there. We could do our work more effectively. I wouldn't say that the programmers got pushed out as much as the tent got bigger. And unfortunately, when the tent got bigger, I think that especially at the conferences and events, the new shiny penny suddenly took center stage, and some of it would be more of the soft skill portions of it and all the rest. And I think that in that first 20 years, as we've went through, as we've seen now going from, like I'm saying, from the hardware side over to finance, over to defense, over to government, there's just been a whole bunch of people trying to adopt the mindset and coming up with new methods. And I think that that's been really a big plus. And I would like the programmers, by the way, to re-have the voice, to kind of bring them back into the fold and not be the stepchildren in the sides over there anymore. That would be great.
Right, fantastic intro. Thank you very much, obviously, for being here as we get into some further conversations. I'm going to hand over to Jürgen next. Jürgen, great to have you here with us as well. Thanks very much. Over to you, intro and sort of give us an understanding.
All right, sure. Well, my name is Jürgen Appelo. I'm calling in from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And my role has been to focus on the non-programming aspects of Agile. So yes, I have seen that it emerged as something specifically applicable to programming. Actually, I am a software engineer by heart, so I did extreme programming and that stuff in 2000 plus. But I ended up in management positions because my team basically begged our managers to promote me away because I sucked so badly at the programming, and I did a better job as a team leader apparently. But the principles remain the same, and I think we can compliment the people who were there at Snowbird for coming up with the values and the principles that turned out to be pretty universal across disciplines and professions. And they focused, of course, given their background, on the programming part, and they came up with practices that apply to programming. But hey, feedback cycles is not something that only applies to programming. It applies to design, it applies to management, it applies to marketing whatsoever. So yes, as Ray said, the tent got bigger. Other people said, hey, that also applies to my job. I don't happen to be a programmer, but I would love to help and not block things, because that's another thing. The programmers noticed that they couldn't do everything they wanted because they needed other parts of the company to change as well. They want to do things differently, but they were confronted with annual performance appraisals and traditional marketing pipelines, etc. So they were like, hey, you guys should also do something different so that we can do the way program the way we want. So they basically invited the others into the tent, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's a good thing. So now we end up with business agility as sort of an umbrella term, I suppose, to encapsulate everything. And I would be sad if the programmer said, well, it's not our tent anymore. I don't want to see them leave. For sure, they should have an important room in an important stage in the tent, but let's cherish that other people wanted to be in as well, because to be honest, when you offer a product or a service to a customer, the programming part is a part of it, but it's not everything. There's a lot before and after and around the programming that is quite crucial in order to offer that great experience to a customer. So let's be a bit holistic about it. And yeah, I think that's it's good that we are where we are now.
Awesome, Jürgen, thank you very much. Lots of points I agree, coming from that software engineering background myself as well. So awesome, thanks. Jeff, over to you. Please give us a little intro and give us your thoughts on the question.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I have no idea why I'm here. I'm the odd one out in a way, because I never have been and almost certainly never will be a programmer. I do have a certificate somewhere that says I can program in Visual Basic, but you don't want me on your team, trust me. So I have no background there. And what's been interesting for me, so in 2001, I was a project manager of a software team, but had no idea what they were doing. And so just kind of had to trust their expertise, really. I couldn't tell them what to do and had no desire to tell them what to do. So it sort of fit quite nicely to my lack of knowledge and expertise. And so I think that's why I grasped onto it. And in a way, so I think the original question was around, how's it changed over 20 years? And so I probably don't have as much attachment to the original manifesto in a way, because I didn't create it. So in a way, it hasn't changed at all, because the manifesto hasn't changed at all. And that is still, to this day, the closest you can get to a definition of what Agile is in many ways. So it kind of hasn't changed, but people talking about the tent expanding and being much more relevant to lots more industries, domains, roles, subjects, I just think is fantastic. I still seeing people using the principles and the values in all sorts of different circumstances. So the diversity has just increased tremendously, I would say, over the last 20 years. And I think what's been interesting when you look back, but perhaps interesting wouldn't be the word I'd use at the moment when you were there, is just the number of sort of, I'll say, healthy conflicts along the way. And we sort of hinted at that already. And software developers feel like they've been pushed out, and that's a perspective. And that sense of baffled, whether it's Scrum and Kanban or whether it's business Agile and software, these tensions have been necessary, and they've shown a great deal of passion, and they've been necessary to see it expand and as Jürgen's saying, to encompass the whole when we're talking about product development, customer value. So at the time, it feels quite painful, whatever tension it is, but at the end of it, you think, oh yeah, we needed that tension to grow.
Fantastic. Look, these are all great points, and hopefully this will help lead into the next part of the conversation. And I'm going to leave it open for whoever then wants to come in and organically pass it on to the next member of our expert panel. So one of the questions that have been bandied around a lot recently on LinkedIn, on social media, Twitter, other things, which myself and the organizing committee have, been wrestling with and hearing and seeing what people wanted to answer and how they wanted to answer this particular question. But has sort of Agile, whether we want to capital A it, small A it, agility, whatever we want to do, has it had its moment in terms of improving organizations? And if not, what other areas for improvement are there? Who wants to go first?
I'll dive in. The feature's here, but it's it's not distributed equally. If you look at a lot of what's going on in Agile development today, I see teams in India getting empowered now, very similar to where a decade ago, somewhere in the US, somebody was getting empowered by using Agile. Same with South Africa or other countries. It's not all equal. So when we think about Agile and Agile development or Agile management or all of the new things that we've got, for some people, it's new for them still. And it's interesting because I've been working with the Agile Alliance the last couple of years and watching the conference and seeing who the attendees are and those things, and 60% new, first exposure to Agile. And it's like we're 20 years in and yet we're still getting this group of people who've never known what this is or how to work in this way. So I think that there's still growth that's going on. As far as the last part about shifting, and I've seen so much writing about every year, it's the first of the year, Agile's jumped the shark, Agile is, next, this is going to be something beyond Agile, or we try to go rename it by calling it business agility or something else. But it still all comes down to that we've been struggling for 20 years to live up to the principles that are in the Agile Manifesto. Every team that I come and have exposure to, I ask them, are those principles, read them and ask the question, are they easy or hard to do in your company context? And notoriously, more than half of the 12 or maybe 3 of them are easy for them to do and the rest are still hard. So I still think we have lots of work that needs to be done as well. And I know, Jorgen, I'll point to you because you've been doing a lot in the management space. And I think that's been helping, but I'm gonna turn it over to you and get your impression on it.
Yeah, I recently reflected on that on the socials, where I do quite a bit of communication. I compared it with the word cyber. We have to distinguish the word from the meaning. And I am of an age that I remember that we talked about cyber stuff, like cyberspace and cyber things, and that was pretty cool. Nobody uses the word cyber anymore. Only old people use the word cyber, but it is everywhere. We are in cyberspace right now, basically, and we don't have the word for it anymore. And the young ones have no idea what you're talking about when you use the word cyber. So I think it's the same with Agile. Has the word Agile had its day? Well, as a word, maybe at some point we're not going to use it anymore, but I don't think we're going to see feedback cycles lengthening again for any time soon. In fact, they will keep shortening for a while. I'm pretty sure. But maybe we will stop calling it Agile, and who cares? I don't care personally if we come up with other terms. And I'm also been quite fascinated by other movements such as design thinking and lean startup and whatnot. That had very, very similar insights from very different angles, very different perspectives. Feedback cycles have been around since time immemorial, We should not pretend that we were the ones in the Agile community coming up with the idea that we should deliver things faster. It made total sense to have that insight in the software world, and yes, we pulled other people in. But I'm okay with letting go of the term and just seeing this as it's a cliche, but the new normal that we live in nowadays. So the values and principles remain very much the same, but the practices change over time, because the way we do Agile now, it's very different from how we did that 20 years ago. So yeah, goodbye Agile, welcome new world, basically, that Agile has helped to introduce.
Who else wants to step in?
I guess, having slotted myself in as something of the programmer advocate and troublemaker, I guess I might as well lean into that and embrace it. Around 2002, I joined, or I just went for a few days to visit a well-functioning early Scrum team and talk to the various people there. And they were loving it. And particularly, I remember the product owner said to me that, you know, being a product owner is way, way harder than the way I used to do this stuff, but it's so great, and I can't see why anyone else, I can't see why anyone would want to develop software any other way. So that was 2002. I don't remember the year exactly, but maybe around 2009, 2010, I was one of a vast flood of rent-a-consultants who were brought in to spread Scrum throughout the enterprise. And I was talking to one of the people there, and he said, and this is burned in my brain, at least my job doesn't suck as much as it used to. So you have, in the period of 8 or so short years, going from something that was quite frankly liberatory to something that is, oh, well, I guess it's better. And that was actually the time when I decided I need to switch out of Agile consulting. But I think it's important to, maybe it's important to understand that the original Agile caught on because there were a bunch of people who were suffering to the extent that, you know, well-paid people who sit in an office all day can suffer, but they were working in a situation that they knew was wrong and painful, and they had an idea based on actual experiences of something that would work better. And that's been lost, the sense that this is about, I think that's been lost, the sense that this is about making people happier. Agile caught on because Ward Cunningham had the great idea to put up Agile-manifesto.org with principles and values. And the really clever idea was that he had the idea to let people sign the manifesto. And there was an absolute flood of people saying, yes, yes, I want this, I want this, I want this. And I guess to some extent, I think that has gone away, and I think that's too bad.
I would disagree with that. It's gone away. I think other people have the right to be happier as well. Not only the programmers, but also the project managers and the line managers and the HR people and the marketers, etc. Because why would they not have suffered to a similar extent as the programmers? So let's praise them for being among the first to realize that things can be done differently. But not trying to plug my book here, but I wrote the book Managing for Happiness that seems to be doing quite well. So other people try to be happier in their jobs as well. So I don't see it as having gone away. I just see it as the need has been realized, or we have realized the need in other areas as well. So
it's okay that managers are happy.
Well, I think
I don't mind that.
The one group that I think is missing.
Thank you, Brian.
1 second. I think it is notable that Agile has become, to a much greater extent than it used to, a dirty word among software development teams.
That's sad.
Well, I was gonna, not to step over on this, but I've had people tell me that they've been scrummed, using it as a verb, that it's been inflicted upon them. And every time I've dug into those situations, I discovered that they weren't practicing the mindset. They weren't practicing Agile. They were actually just using a waterfall mindset or a fixed mindset, and not, they're just not doing it right. And if it hurts, as they say, if it hurts, you're doing it wrong. And that's been a case for certain things. And I didn't mean to step over you, Jeff.
I'm sure Jeff has an opinion on that. Come on, Jeff.
Well, I think the one group that hasn't really been mentioned so far is customers have a right to be happy as well. And I was chatting to Mike Cohn last week, and he said if he'd have been in the Agile Manifesto creation room, it would have been worse. The manifesto would have been worse for his involvement, because he would have lobbied against the duplication of the word customer. But actually, he's glad that it was duplicated, because customers are really important in this, and that's our primary motivation. The idea of if it hurts, you're doing it wrong, I do disagree with that one, because actually change does hurt. Doing something differently does hurt. Changing your habits is really uncomfortable for people, and actually we need to get past that discomfort. So yeah, I get there's a difference between discomfort and hurt, but equally I think for a lot of the people that I'm working with, developers, customers, everyone has to sort of put themselves out there and risk feeling uncomfortable while they get used to a different way of working, and it's really scary. And yeah, that I think, from trying to come back to the idea that software developers kind of feel that Agile is a dirty word, I can get that. I absolutely can. And it is a shame, like Jürgen says. And anyone that's had Agile done to them hasn't experienced Agile. I think that's something we could probably all agree on, right? And does that make Agile a dirty thing? I don't think so. So is Agile going away? In a way, I hope it does. So the kind of things that we talked about, it should just not be a thing anymore. It's just kind of the way that we do things in certain circumstances. That's normal. And I think we're finding that, Jürgen saying perhaps we're feeling old now, and I am starting to feel old. People start to say, well, where did this come from? Why would you not have done this? But they haven't experienced the situation that we were in 20 years ago, when it was very difficult to have cycle times like that and feedback loops like that. So I'll stop waffling there and let somebody else come in.
But I wanted to just say on that one, Jeff, when you say about the customer and the customer focus, and I see that what the intent was, we were going to originally connect engineers closer to the customer. And what I found was, because I used to work for a very big, Fortune 100 company. And the hardest thing that we ever had is don't let the engineers in the room with the customers, because they're going to make, and this literally, I heard this from the marketing people and the sales people, is they're going to go promise something and they're not going to deliver it. And this lack of trust that kept those pools away in the bigger companies. And I don't think we got there yet with Agile to be able to have a real legitimate conversation between the customer and the developers and connecting those two. Some companies have done really good jobs. I'm really impressed with like Microsoft, where if you go post a question about a Microsoft thing, that it's a developer who's answering you. and that to me is like to the metal, to where you need to do. And what we've seen is with companies, when they do that, they're actually more successful. They suddenly turn stuff around.
Dictate, right? Yeah,
What's that?
And I think market forces, they take time, right? But the companies that are successful by employing those tactics will eventually win out. I think one of the things that I've suffered with over my 20 years is over empathy in a way. And so when you paint that picture of not being able to trust developers to be in the same room with the customer, I can picture a scenario where I can empathize with the person saying that, because the developers haven't got the tools, the experience, the confidence to actually have those conversations safely and not feel that they're going to be overruled or what have you. And it takes time to get us all to that point.
Right.
And we've made such progress in that. Not everywhere, admittedly, but we've made such progress in that. And I think that should be applauded by everyone who's taken that step forward.
Yeah, glass is half full, not half empty, as far as I'm concerned. And two things came to mind. You said that people have been scrummed and Agile has been done to them. Well, for me, that's just proof that the non-programmers need to learn what is expected from them as well in order to have the organization be successful. So it cannot be a programmer-only thing, because then the rest of the organization is going to keep behaving badly in an un-agile way. And second, I like the idea of, well, sometimes changes got to start with hurting. I often share the story of me a few years ago when I started running. I did it really, really badly and everything hurt. I discovered muscles I didn't even know existed in my body. But it was motivation for me to learn, okay, how do I do this thing better? Because this is not working for me. But I had to go through that pain in order to be motivated to learn how to do this better, breathing techniques and posture and all that stuff. So yeah, sure, but some people just run in and say, oh, we're doing stand-up meetings, we're scrumming, yay, and then nothing works. And then they figure out, okay, this is painful, maybe we should go to a conference or get a decent coach or something. That's good. You made the first couple of steps, you're on the way. Let's praise them.
Well, I'm going to step in because there's been some fantastic points raised by everybody. And I do think for those of us, all of us here have certainly been on that journey for the 20 years that we are celebrating here tonight. I think one of the things we've got to be mindful of, as it says happy birthday up here on screen right now, we've got to be mindful of, we ran an event last night, a small event last night, and we actually discovered that a lot of the community, the cohort that came along to actually listen, were discovering Agile that day. You know, this was something that they wanted to find out about. You know, we can't presume that necessarily absolutely everybody here has been on a 20-year journey or a 15-year journey or a 10-year journey with this, and somehow they've been through the peaks and the troughs as well, and discovered successes in organizations and failures, resistance from the leadership or the middle management, or even from the teams themselves. So, you know, in trying to, you know, inspire those people that are coming onto that journey now themselves, possibly the growth mindset, which is actually underpinning what we want to do with success in our organizations. You know, what does the future hold for this word Agile, this way of working, this mindset, this set of philosophy and values? What does this hold? And possibly even, you know, for the next 20 years, where do you think we would likely be in the next 20 years? Do you think it's evolved simply beyond the conversation we're having now, that it just becomes a de facto part of the way of working, the norm? We've removed bureaucracy, command and control, micromanagement, and time in terms of that sort of organizational structure? Or do you think it's actually going to commercialize even further? You know, I recently had the chance of chatting with Dave Snowden at a previous conference, who said, that's it, no, it's dead, you know, move on, you know, and we all love Dave for the great points he raises. But I just wonder, how do we inspire that next generation? What do we think possibly the next period, 5, 10, even 20 years is going to look like? And I'm going to pass that back to the panel.
Job, go ahead.
I'd say maybe we're looking at it slightly wrong there, and just take the chance to say, well, how can the next generation inspire us? Because we're kind of assuming that that just because we've gone through that journey so far, we know what the next step is. But actually, we've got our own biases, and we're probably still blinkered by them. But people coming in with a fresh mindset, okay, they might be tempted to make the same mistakes, and we can warn them of history. But equally, I'd be encouraged to say, look at this blank slate. Where would you go next? Thanks, Ray.
I think I like that happiness of customers was mentioned, because I think we can use that as our North Star to see where we're going. If we keep that in mind, we made one step by replacing project with product. That was good, but it's a first. We need to replace product with experience. To give you examples, I have been livid with some companies that offered me great products, but it was sheer impossible just to get the invoice for the thing that I paid for. Or I was quite satisfied with the product, but customer service sucked, bottomless pit of disaster, basically. The other way around can also be the case. There are some products that are so-so, but I stick to them because I love the company, I love the service, I love everything about it, and I will forgive them for not having the best programmers in the world, because the holistic experience for me is still really a really good one. So I think we need to be responsible for the entire experience that customers have. We do not offer just bits and atoms. We create happiness molecules in their brains. That's what we're responsible for, and that includes the entire organization. So I think we have quite a way to go, and that's, as I said, I love design thinking and other methods and frameworks and movements that have something to say in that area.
Nice.
Yeah, to add to that, well, the one thing is someone new and being involved. The freshness of some novelty that put in front of you, and you go, oh, that's exactly the way that we should be approaching this. Those failings, you're right. For most of us who've been in Agile for about 20 years, we don't have that, let's go look through the eyes of a newbie in that particular perspective. But what I think is that there's new stuff that's coming out all the time, and we're too focused on the recipes rather than the craft. And specifically, what I want to see happen, at least for the new people getting involved, that yes, there are those frameworks and there's those pieces and they're great training wheels, but you need to grow past those and become a chef. And not everyone needs to be chefs, but become a way of being able to look at the pieces that you have in front of you and be able to build something new and share that. Because one of the things I thought on the manifesto was done really well, that we found a way, and that's what they open it up with, that I found a way, and we want to help others to do it. And I thought that was the thing that when Ward published the manifesto out, not just the signature portion of it is, but people like you, Brian, and others went off and started helping people to go do that. And this community has this whole festival is about giving back and helping, because we've been through the trenches. So I think getting back to where we're going in the next realm of all of this is not the commercialization of Agile. Agile isn't the destination. Building a better product is the destination. It's this community of practice getting together and being where I can share an idea at a conference or on a phone call, or just being able to share things out. And then that idea, that the infection of the idea, because ideas are infectious, they jump from brain to brain, that infection, it just literally gets other people to come up with new ideas and then share those ideas with us. And then I think that was what Jeff was saying was, I really want to hear about new ideas. I'm tired of hearing about Scrum personally. I know for people it's new for them, that's good, but I want to hear about the new stuff. I want to hear about the cool things somebody did with the pattern, Anyway.
Who's next? Brian, over to you.
I predict that sometime within the next 20 years I will die. Other than that, I have no predictions for the future, because my predictions for the future have not actually been very accurate in the past, and I see no reason to think they're going to get any better now. I want to do some of the what would you add to the manifesto, because I have a whole talk on that.
Good stuff. Okay, well, I'm gonna so a slight follow-on from what we were just talking about, and I love Jeff's point about how do we get those people starting their journey to inspire us. But I'm going to ask, you know, if you could give one sort of piece of advice to someone who is here today, this evening, this afternoon, this morning, wherever we are in the world, and we're a very small world here today, you know, what advice would that be to help them start that journey? What advice, what organic piece of information would you sort of share with them? And I get that from Jeff's point, we would want to get something in return as well from them, but what would you guys give them to help them start their journey? And again, anyone who's got a point, please step in.
So my thing would be this, and please read the manifesto, because most people who start their journey skip by that really quick, and really do the assessment when you're looking at the principles. Ask yourself the question again, like I said earlier, what is easy and hard to do? And if you take just create a list and then say that this is the hardest thing to go change in my universe and my world, and it's going to take months and big projects to go off and go do, don't work on that thing first, because we tend to go work on the biggest, ugliest things as engineers first, versus go to the bottom of the list of the easiest thing that you can change today to make your life a little bit better. And my take is work on that one first, change that thing, have a party, celebrate that you got that done, and then roll on to the next easier thing to go fix based on that. That would be my advice.
Nice advice. Right, thank you very much. Jeff, hand up.
I saw some of the questions coming up on my screen. So one of them stuck in my head, and it's one that I don't have an answer to, but it's one I'm going to link here, which was, how well do we think universities are teaching Agile? And I don't know about anybody else, but I don't know the answer to that, right? But I would like to, I think it's relevant to the question that you've asked, Giles, for me, in that I think if universities are doing their job well, they're teaching people to be curious. They're teaching people to respect the past, but create the future with curiosity. And I think that's what I would be encouraging people to do, whether they're at university or not, is learn other people's lessons, because you can avoid some serious pain that way, but that doesn't mean that what they did is going to be right for you. And so having that healthy respect for the past, but a healthy bravery for creating something new would be my #1 message for anybody.
Brilliant. Fantastic, Jeff. Thanks very much. Guys, we got obviously Jürgen and Brian.
Two things. Since most everybody is doing some sort of Scrum, Ken Schwaber wrote an obscure, but what I think, or at least thought at the time, it's been a long time, was a really good book about Scrum, and it was basically stories about how people in particular Scrum teams acted in exemplary ways. Like, for example, I have often used the story of the Scrum Master and the Furniture Police as an example of what a Scrum Master would be. So I won't tell the story of the Scrum Master and the Furniture Police so that somebody will have to buy the book to get it. I wish I could remember the name of the book. I will bounce off and find it and put it in some place where people can see it. The second thing is, one of the nice things in Kent Beck's first edition of his book on extreme programming was he had a little graph that showed how the 10 or 12 or whatever core practices of extreme programming hooked up together and supported each other. And I liked that because it made there was a big emphasis on how some of these practices are difficult and that you need more self-discipline to do Agile than you need for conventional software development, and that you have to invent ways, tools, practices, habits that force self-discipline on you when you would ordinarily be weak. So the idea that, I guess, self-discipline is the first thing, and think about what it is about your working environment that encourages you to be disciplined versus not.
Fantastic. Brian, great point.
Yeah.
Jürgen.
I would like to summarize it with Ash Maurya's quote, "Love the problem, not the solution." I have seen for the last 20 years far too much focus on solutions, on people building stuff without having full understanding of what problem they are actually solving. The first thing I would tell people, forget all the Agile practices, go and check out jobs to be done theory. What is the actual job that the customer is trying to do? They ask you for a drill, the famous example, but they don't want a drill. They don't want a hole in the wall. They want to put a picture on the wall. That's what they like. They want to decorate their room. That's the job that you're helping them out with. Now, a hole in the wall is one possible solution in order to get there, but there are other avenues of getting there. The customer asks you for a bridge, but that's a solution. What they actually want is they want to get on the other side of the river because they're traveling. So there's far too little understanding still, in my opinion, in the Agile community. What is the job? There's a lot of focus on creating a backlog and lots of user stories, and the customer wants this and the customer wants that. All right, maybe do not listen to the customer for a while. I have been in a situation that I listened to customers far too much and just did whatever they asked. But the customer had no clue because the customer thinks in terms of solutions. The customer finds it very hard to think in terms of what problem do they actually have. And that should be more of our focus. What problem are we trying to solve for them? Because the customer often has difficulty even describing it or realizing it. We need to observe, we need to investigate and analyze. And then when we see the real problem, we could have very different solutions that are simpler, more effective, and more successful. And the customer says, "Oh my God, you really nailed it. That's not what I asked, but that's it." Yeah. We are a long way from there, in my opinion.
Okay, well, we have got now a load of questions. As we can see, there's 59 questions that have come in from our community already this evening. And of course, we are coming back to a proper full-on open mic Q&A session at the end of the evening, afternoon, morning, once we've had Laura come and share her amazing talk. And so all of us will be back again. But if there's a question here that you see on screen that you would like to answer, we would like to just get one at a time, choose a question, answer it, and hopefully then the team behind the scenes will refresh so another one can come up and the next person can choose one question, answer it, and we'll move on round in a sort of pattern like that. So are there any questions there that any of the expert panel would like to provide an answer for?
Brian really wants to talk about changes to the Agile Manifesto, so I want to hear that as well.
Yeah, go Brian, go.
I'm opening up the presentation that I made called Agile 10 Years Later, but it keeps stealing, the GoToMeeting keeps stealing my screen. And I don't know if I can remember all of them. Well, I don't know that this is going to work. I'll try to remember. There were, I think, 5 new ones I added. Discipline might have been one of them. I know that one of them was ease, working with ease. I even made posters for that I used to give out to clients. that said work with ease, or yeah, work with ease. My wife does surgery, or she used to before she retired. She used to occasionally do surgery, and she would describe working with a really good surgical team where she is just talking through what she's thinking of, and she makes this gesture that she'll just reach out her hand and the proper instrument will appear as if by magic in her hand, and then the same movement she plunges it into the abdomen of a cow, because she did surgery on cows. And one of the things I noticed about successful Agile teams was that feeling of ease. And I think it's an important, I don't know, practice is find the things that are rough and feel like friction in the process of doing the work and getting rid of those. That just seemed to be a practice of good teams. I had joy in there for Jürgen, but he's already covered that. One of the other ones that I thought was interesting was that good Agile teams seem to be reactive rather than proactive. Instead of planning to get something done and performing it, they work on their skill at reacting to surprise, and being able to gracefully change their course, whether that course is what the product should do or how the code should be created, and so forth. And though there were others, but those are the two I can remember. And I really like the work with ease one, because that seems to be one of those things that people don't think is important, but is actually very important. If I remember any others, I'll chime in.
Brian, thank you very much. Obviously, Jeff, Ray, Jürgen, are there any other questions that you've either seen flashing up on screen or are up here now that you would like to drop into and just provide a short answer? We've got about 7-8 minutes left before we hand over to our second event of the evening. Afternoon, morning.
Well, I just wanted to briefly respond or add on to Brian with his reactive mode. One thing that has bugged me for 20 years was this responding to change in the Agile Manifesto. Why not causing the change? Because if you're always responding to change, you're never the leader in an industry. Elon Musk is now the richest man in the world, and he did not respond to change. He caused the change that others had to respond to. That's innovation. So I think we have to move from agile to innovation at certain times, be disruptive and cause the change that others will have to scramble to adapt to. So that's what I would love to change about the manifesto.
By definition there, Jürgen, there can only be a small proportion of people who are causing the change if everyone else is scrambling after it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's something that and I think that's the beauty for me of this, is that you can apply this to innovation and you can apply this to maintenance. You can apply these principles to different ways of working in whatever circumstances you find yourselves in. The question that I would have picked out, although I can't see it anymore, was something to do with how do you stop zombie scrum or bastardizing agile? And I wouldn't really put my energy into that personally. I think even zombie scrum has its place. It's all part of learning. It's all part of the organizations that do it well do it better. The organizations that don't either fail because they don't do it well, or they learn very quickly to do it better. So I wouldn't suggest, I try and overempathize, like I said, and say, well, everyone is trying to do their best right now. No one's trying to be a failure. No one's trying to do things badly. And so appreciate the efforts they're making, give them the benefit of the doubt, and be there to catch them and help them get up and go again. So don't try and stop it, because that implies a judgment to me.
Right.
Brilliant.
And to add to what you all have said, I agree with all of it. Is that there's a couple of ideas that are in the manifesto that are not really explored. One is we put that term of we want to have sustainability in development. And sustainability it can be a big word. It's, you could pack a lot into that, but I'd like to explore, and as we go forward, of what does that mean? Is it just, Scrum isn't here, or any of the Agile methods are not here to torture anybody. It should be a sustainable pace of development that we can go create. But to Jürgen's point as well, is just that if you look at the learning fast and the empathy equation of learning fast, sometimes what we learn we don't like, but we learn it. And the question of how we pivot and how we move on from an idea to a new idea, and let that organic, and back to Dave Snowden and what he talks about in the Cynefin model, which is, when we're dealing with great degrees of complexities, and guess what? Humans are complex creatures. We need more empathy to be added into this. And then we just need to learn and pivot and do things in a way that people just don't get all wrapped around the axle about delivery dates and deadlines and all of these other things that I hear, that when you actually push on somebody and say, why is that delivery date there? And they can't answer it for you other than it's just a date somebody made up. That, let's be a little bit more, we know the story's going to unfold. If we put energy towards it, it's going to unfold. Let's put the empathy into the equation, and let's use that in a way that we could move forward more effectively together than just we have been, I think.
Right. I mean, fantastic point for us to, I think, start our wrap up of our panel discussion. Thank you to everybody who's obviously adding the questions. As mentioned, our sort of fourth and final part of today's event is the big panel Q&A discussion at the end. So please do keep the questions coming, because we will try and get through as many as possible, and also get our guests to help choose the questions that they think they want to answer and share with you guys as the community. So back to Brian's piece with the stories. Funny, we actually, the committee team here today, we're thinking about getting the community and speakers and guests and other Agilistas around the world to help create an ebook, if you like, of stories of the things where it has worked well, where it hasn't worked well in organizations, to share those real world learnings. We've already sort of started the organizing and everything else, and it would be great, obviously, if we can follow up with you all, and obviously our future speakers as well, to take part in that, to add your sort of view of this snapshot at the 20-year mark and what we've been through, the successes, the failures, the highs, the lows, and everything else. Again, I think as a great reflection to help inspire that next generation who are coming on behind us. Brian, I hope in 20 years you're not dead. It would be nice if that wasn't the case.
I'd rather be dead than old.
Well, look, guys, I personally want to say thank you very much for an absolutely incredible panel discussion. I know some of you guys are coming up next as well in terms of the TEDx Lightning talks. And hopefully, as we've seen, we've been sharing some of the demographics where all of our amazing audience are coming along to from the world today. And I'm sure Jonathan will be able to give us an update when he comes on in a minute, knowing where all of the people, the community, are turning up and watching us from today. So, gents, thank you very much. Major appreciation, major shout out to obviously Ray, Brian, Jeff, and Jürgen. Thanks, guys. And obviously, we'll see you later at the panel discussion. All right, so now, without further ado, it's great that we are about to enter into our second part today. I'm going to invite my good friend and colleague and partner, Jonathan, to come back on.